Welcome to the Irrational podcast, the podcast where the concept of right or wrong is mostly irrelevant. Together, let us explore difficult and fascinating topics in the attempt to understand the rationalities that lie within the irrational. Our goal is to get lost in rabbit holes and hopefully come out with thought-provoking discussions. This is the Irrational podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 1, the introductory podcast. And this podcast is going to be probably rather short, but I'm just going to go ahead and explain a very basic overview of the goal of this podcast and what to expect. So, just as the title, the goal of this podcast is to explore the irrationalities that lie within the irrational. Well, actually, the other way around, the irrationalities that lie within the irrational. So it's a simple concept in theory, but it's incredibly difficult when you actually get started into detail and to really start focusing. So what do I mean? So for example, let's say I'm an African American and I say Black Lives Matter. You know, when you really stop and think about it, well, okay, so Black Lives Matter. Yes, this is a thing. Black lives do matter. I think just about any rational person can think about that. But then what about the other people that feel like, well, what about all lives matter? Now we have a fairly interesting discussion that can be made here, because there's multiple ways this conversation can go. We can either take a step back and go, well, hold on a minute. Black Lives Matter, the movement, should focus on itself. Why can't we just say, Black Lives Matter and just let them have their platform? On the flip side to that, it's equally valid, in my opinion, for people to take a step back and go, yeah, but you're only focusing on a specific ethnicity. What about, Mexicans, whites, Asians, etc.? Don't they deserve to have a platform? And where we come in is, we're not here to dictate what's right or wrong. We're here to simply explore both sides as equally as possible in the attempt of just trying to make sense of things. Because when you really get down to exploring irrational topics, if you're not grounded, it's so easy to get lost in the emotional and just start at a loss, if I had a way to describe it, for example. But when you really take a step back and you begin to realize that there is a logic in the irrational, then things start to make sense quite a bit more. It's a lot easier to begin to go, oh, okay, wait a minute. I think I know why people think this way. And it's perfectly okay. What I realized was the further I went down these quote-unquote rabbit holes, the more I began to realize that what is really right or wrong, quote-unquote, is really up for interpretation. You're a lot more likely to be right if you can convince masses that you're right versus a scientist who might actually be technically right. Because what I began realizing is, what is the point of being technically right if you can't convince anybody that you're technically right? It doesn't even matter. So there's so many fascinating topics that we're going to explore, and I hope I've given a very basic example of what to expect, but I have to absolutely emphasize the number one goal and focus of this podcast is exploration. I do not have an agenda. I'm probably too autistic to have an agenda, if I'm being honest. I just want to explore. I want to have fun. I generally enjoy doing this, and hopefully I can draw a lot of questions. Hopefully I can draw some healthy criticism. I mean, I don't expect you guys to agree with everything I say. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact at some point one of you guys will go, hey, okay, I disagree with you on this, and we can explore. Well, instead of just walking away, how about we have some healthy discussion? Well, that's it for right now, guys.